Chapter 33. The Pair of Dappled Greys. Madame Danglars, whose beauty was quite remarkable in spite of her 36 years. Really? Rude. Was at the piano, a little masterpiece of inlay, while Lucien Debray was seated at a work table, turning over the pages of an album. Before the Count's arrival, Lucien had had
Hi.
time to relate many particulars regarding him to Madame Danglars. Also, hi, Sloth, welcome in. Before the Count's arrival, Lucien had had time to relate many particulars regarding him to Madame Danglars, and her curiosity, being aroused by the old stories related to Morcerf, was brought to its highest pitch by the details told her by Lucien. In consequence, she received the Baron with a smile, which was not her custom, while the Count received a ceremonious but at the same time graceful curtsy in acknowledgment of his bow. And yes, I'm doing my best, and I'm certainly much recovered from over the past couple weeks. 36, that's like 87 in men's years. Oh, oof. Okay. Baroness, permit me to present to you the Count of Monte Cristo, who has been most warmly recommended to me in my correspondence at Rome, said Danglars. I will only add one fact which will make him a favorite among the ladies. He intends staying in Paris for a year, and during that time he proposes spending 6 millions. That sounds promising for a series of balls, dinners, and supper parties. And I hope the Count will not forget us, as we shall not forget him in the small parties we give. Though the introduction was so vulgar in its flattery, it is such a rare event that a man comes to Paris to spend a princely fortune that Madame Danglars gave the Count a look which was not devoid of interest. You have come at a very bad season, said she. Paris is detestable in summer. There are no more balls, receptions, or parties. The Italian opera is at London. The French opera is everywhere except at Paris. There remain, for our sole entertainment, a third-rate race meeting or two on the Champ de Mars or at Satori. At this moment Baroness Danglars, confidential maid, entered, and, approaching her mistress, whispered something into her ear. Madame Danglars turned pale. "Impossible," said she. "It is nevertheless the truth, madame," replied the maid. Madame turned to her husband. "Is this true, monsieur, what my maid tells me?" "What has she told you, madame?" asked Danglars, visibly agitated. "She tells me that when my coachman went to put my horses to the carriage, they were gone from the stables. What does this signify, may I ask?" "Madame, listen to me," said Danglars. "I will certainly listen to you, for I am curious to know what you have to tell me. I will ask these gentlemen to be our judge. Messieurs," continued she, "Danglars has 10 horses in his stables. 2 of these, the handsomest in Paris, belong to me. You know, my dappled greys, Monsieur Debray. I have promised to lend Madame de Villefort my carriage to go to the boys tomorrow. Boys? Go to the boys tomorrow. And now my horses are gone. I suppose Monsieur has found some means of making a few thousands of francs on them, and has sold them. What a money-grasping lot speculators are." Just then, Debray, who was looking out of the window, suddenly exclaimed, "By Jove! Surely those are your very horses in the Count's carriage?" My dappled greys, cried out Madame Danglars, rushing to the window. Yes, those are mine indeed. Danglars was astounded. Danglars was astounded. Is it possible? Said Monte Cristo, affecting astonishment. It is incredible, said the banker. Danglars looked so pale and discomfited that the Count almost had pity on him. The banker foresaw a disastrous scene in the near future. The Baroness's frowning brow predicted a storm. Debray saw the gathering clouds, and, on pretext of an appointment, took his leave. Smart fellow. While Monte Cristo, not wishing to mar the advantages he hoped he had gained by staying any longer, bowed to Madame Danglars and withdrew, leaving the Baron to his wife's anger. All is well, thought Monte Cristo. I have achieved my object. The domestic peace of this family is now in my hands, and with one action I am going to win the gratitude of both the Baron and the Baroness. What a stroke of luck! But with all this, he added, I have not been introduced to Mademoiselle Eugenie, whose acquaintance I am very anxious to make. Never mind, he continued, with that peculiar smile of his, I am in Paris with plenty of time before me. That can be left for a later date. With this reflection, he stepped into his carriage and returned to his house. 2 hours later, Madame Danglars received a charming letter from the Count of Monte Cristo, in which he wrote that he did not wish to make his entrance into Paris society by causing annoyance to a beautiful woman, and entreated her to take back her horses. The horses were sent back, wearing the same harness as in the morning, but in the center of each rosette, which adorned the sides of their heads, there was a diamond. Danglars also received a letter. The Count asked his permission to satisfy a millionaire's whim, and requested him to excuse the Eastern fashion adopted in returning the horses. In the evening, Monte Cristo went to his country house at Auteuil. Auteuil? French. Went to his country house at Auteuil, accompanied by Ali. Toward 3 o'clock next day, Ali, summoned by a stroke of the gong, entered the Count's study. Ali, you have often spoke to me of your skill in throwing the lasso, said the Count. Ali drew himself up proudly and nodded assent. Good. You could stop a bull with your lasso? Ali nodded assent. A tiger. Another nod. A lion? Ali pretended to throw the lasso and imitated the choked roar of a lion. I understand, said Monte Cristo. You have hunted lions. Ali nodded his head proudly. But could you stop 2 runaway horses? Ali smiled. Well then, listen, said Monte Cristo. In a few minutes a carriage will come along drawn by 2 runaway horses, the same dappled greys that I had yesterday. Even at the risk of being run over, you must stop these horses before my door. Ali went out into the street and traced a line on the pavement before the door. Then the Nubian seated himself on the stone that formed the angle of the house and the road and began smoking his chibouque, which is a long Turkish pipe. Smoking his chibouque, while Monte Cristo returned to his study. Toward 5 o'clock, however, when the Count expected the arrival of the carriage, he began to manifest distinct signs of impatience. He paced a room overlooking the road, stopped at intervals to listen, and from time to time approached the window through which he could see Ali blowing out puffs of smoke with a regularity which indicated that he was quite absorbed in his important occupation. Suddenly, A distant rumbling was heard which drew nearer with lightning rapidity. Then a carriage appeared. The coachman vainly striving to restrain the wild, infuriated horses who were bounding along at a mad speed. In the carriage a young lady and a child of 7 or 8 years were lying in each other's embrace. Their terror had deprived them of all power to utter a sound. A stone under the wheel or any other impediment would have sufficed to upset the creaking carriage. It kept to the middle of the road, and the cries of the terrified spectators could be heard as it flew along. Suddenly, Ali laid down his chibuke, took the lasso from his pocket and threw it. Catching the forelegs of the near horse in a triple coil, he suffered himself to be dragged along 3 or 4 yards, by which time the tightening of the lasso so hampered the horse that it fell on to the pole, which it snapped, thus paralyzing the efforts the other horse made to pursue its mad course. The coachman took advantage of this short respite to jump down from his box, but Ali had already seized the nostrils of the other horse in his iron grip, and the animal, snorting with pain, sank down beside its companion. Ooh la la. I doubt 2 runaway horses could draw a carriage, no matter how talented they are at art. If fair. All this took no more time than it takes a bullet to hit its mark. It was nevertheless sufficient for a man, followed by several servants, to rush out from the house opposite which the accident had happened. As soon as the coachman opened the door of the carriage, he lifted out the lady, who was clinging to the cushion with one hand, while with the other she pressed to her bosom her fainting son. Monte Cristo carried them both into the salon, and placing them on a sofa, said, "You have nothing more to fear, madame. You are safe." The lady soon came round, and pointed to her son with a look which was more eloquent than all entreaties. The child, indeed, was still unconscious. "I understand, madame," said the count, examining the child, "but you need not be alarmed. The child has received no injury. It is only fear that has rendered him unconscious." "Are you only telling me this to still my anxiety? Look how pale he is. My son, my child, my Edward, answer your mother. Oh, monsieur, send for a doctor. I will give my fortune to him who restores my son to me." Monte Cristo opened a casket and took out a flagon of Bohemian glass encrusted with gold, containing a blood-red liquid, a single drop of which he placed on the child's lips. Though still pale, the child immediately opened his eyes. On seeing this, the mother was beside herself with joy. "Where am I?" she cried out, "and to whom do I owe so much happiness after such a cruel trial?" "Madame, you are under the roof of a man who esteems himself most fortunate at having been able to spare you any pain," said Monte Cristo. "It is all the fault of my wretched inquisitiveness," said the lady. "All Paris talked of Madame Danglars' magnificent horses, and I was foolish enough to want to try them." "Is it possible?" exclaimed the count, with admirably feigned surprise. "Do these horses belong to the Baroness?" "Yes, monsieur. Do you know her?" "I have that honor, and I feel a double joy at having been the means of saving you from the danger that threatened you, for you might have attributed the accident to me. I bought these horses from the Baron yesterday, but the Baroness appeared to regret their loss so deeply that I sent them back with the request that she would accept them from me." "Then you must be the Count of Monte Cristo, of whom Hermione? Hermione? There's no O, though. Hermine, I'm guessing. Then you must be the Count of Monte Cristo, of whom Hermine spoke so much yesterday." "That is so, madame." "And I, monsieur, am Madame Heloise de Villefort." The Count bowed as though he heard a name completely unknown to him. "How grateful Monsieur de Villefort will be," continued Heloise. "He owes both our lives to you. You have restored to him his wife and his son. If it had not been for your brave servant, this dear child and myself would certainly have been killed. Alas, madame, I still shudder at the thought of your danger. I hope you will permit me to give your servant the just reward for his devotion." "Madame, I beg of you not to spoil Ali, either by praise or by reward," replied the Count. Ali is my slave. In saving your life he served me, and it is his duty to serve me." "But he risked his life," said Madame de Villefort, who was strangely impressed by the Count's masterful tone. "I saved his life, madame. Consequently, it belongs to me," replied Monte Cristo. Madame de Villefort made no reply. Perhaps she was thinking about this man who made such a strong impression on everybody who set eyes on him. During this momentary silence, the Count had leisure to examine the child whom his mother was covering with kisses. He was small and slender. His skin was of that whiteness generally found with auburn-haired children, yet a mass of rebellious black hair covered his rounded forehead. It fell onto his shoulders, encircling his face and redoubling the vivacity of his eyes, which were so expressive of sly malice and childish naughtiness. His mouth was large, and his lips, which had scarcely regained their color, were thin. The features of this child of 8 were those of a boy of 12 or more. His first movement was to wriggle himself free from his mother's arms, and to open the casket from which the Count had taken the vial of elixir. With the air of a child accustomed to satisfy his every whim, and without asking anyone's permission, he began to unstopper the vials. Vials? Yeah. Unstopper the vials. "Don't touch anything there, Sonny," said the Count sharply. "Some of those liquids are dangerous, not only to taste, but even to inhale." Madame de Villefort turned pale, and seizing her son's arm, drew him toward her. Her fears were calmed. She immediately cast on the casket a fleeting but expressive glance, which did not escape the Count's notice. "Do you reside here?" Madame de Villefort inquired as she rose to take her leave. "No, madame," replied the Count. "This is only a little country house I have just bought. I reside at number 30 Champs-Élysées. But I see that you have quite recovered and are desirous of returning home. I have just given orders for the same horses to be put to my carriage, and Ali will have the honor of driving you home, while your coachman stays here to repair the damage." "I dare not go with the same horses," said Madame de Villefort. "Hey, little Odin, welcome in." "Oh, you will see, madame, that in Ali's hands they will be as gentle as lambs," was Monte Cristo's reply. Indeed, Ali had already tackled the horses that had only with difficulty been set on their legs again. He held in his hand a sponge soaked in aromatic vinegar, with which he rubbed away the sweat and foam that covered their heads and nostrils. Almost immediately, they began to breathe loudly and to tremble violently. This lasted several seconds. Then, in the midst of a large crowd, which the news of the accident had gathered, before the house, Ali harnessed the horses to the Count's brougham, took the reins, mounted the box, and, to the utter astonishment of those spectators who had beheld these same horses bolting like a whirlwind, he was compelled to use his whip vigorously to make them move. Even then, they went at such a slow trot that it took nearly 2 hours to reach the Faubourg Faubourg. Bourg? Bourg. I'm guessing Bourg. To reach the Faubourg Saint Honor, where Madame de Villefort lived. So suddenly, these racing horses are captured by the man of Count Monte Cristo, and now it took them exponentially more time to return, probably because they wore themselves out, I imagine. But the real question is, what caused them to bolt in the first place? What did Monte Cristo do to make the circumstances happen in his favor? He knew that they were going to be coming. So what did he do or install in the Baron's house to make that happen? Makes you wonder. All right, we are between chapters, which means we hydrate, we caffeinate, we grab a snack, do whatever it is that we need to relax and enjoy the story, which for me is hydrate. Big water. Okay. So let's see here. Fix that up. Don't forget on these breaks between chapters to make sure that you're stretching and relaxing and just vibing, you know? I've really enjoyed the course of this story. I mean, I've always enjoyed the movies, and this is the first time I'm reading Alexander Dumas. Well, that's not true. I read ages ago, I read The Three Musketeers, but I mean, I've read so many other books since then that it'll be nice to revisit at some future date. But, all right, I'm ready for chapter 34. Let's see, do I have any in my... I don't think that I do. I don't think I have any of my mods present. That's unfortunate. Well, eventually I'll have to get them to toss out a few shouts here, because there's a few folks here. Deus, Fent, Solution, Revi. Lasada doesn't want to be shouted out. Higtastic, Kindred. Good friends, one and all. All right. Chapter 34. Haiti. My readers will remember that the new, or rather old, acquaintances of the Count of Monte Cristo were Maximilian, Julie, and Emmanuel. He had promised Maximilian that he would call at the house in the Rue Meslay, and the day had now come. Anticipation. Anticipation of the visit he was about to make, of the few happy moments he was about to spend, of the fleeting glimpse of paradise in the hell to which he had voluntarily engaged himself, brought a charming expression of serenity to Monte Cristo's countenance. And his face was radiant with joy, rarely depicted there. It was midday, and the Count had set apart 1 hour to be spent with Haiti. It seemed as though he sensed that his crushed spirit needed to be prepared for gentle emotions, as other spirits have to be prepared for violent ones. The young Greek occupied a suite separated from the Count's. It was furnished entirely in the Oriental style. The floors were covered with thick Turkey carpets, rich brocades hung, suspended from the walls, and in each room there was a large and spacious divan, with piles of cushions which could be placed according to the fancy of those that used them. The Greek girl was in the room at the far end of her suite. She was reclining on the floor on cushions of blue satin, with her back against the divan. One softly rounded One softly rounded arm encircled her head, and between her lips she had the coral tube in which was set the flexible pipe of a nargile, which is a water pipe, apparently. Her dress was that of a woman of Epirus. White satin trousers embroidered with pink roses displayed two small, childlike feet, which might have been taken for Parian marble had they not been playing with two little slippers with curling toes embroidered with gold and pearls. A long white and blue striped vest with long sleeves ornamented with loops of silver and buttons of pearl, and on her head was a small gold cap embroidered with pearls, which she wore tilted to one side. From under the cap, on the side where it was tilted up, fell a beautiful natural rose of a deep crimson hue mingling with her hair, which was of such a deep black that it appeared almost blue. The beauty of her face was of the perfect Grecian type, with large black eyes of the softness of velvet, straight nose, coral lips, and pearly teeth. To complete the picture, she had all the charm and freshness of young womanhood, for Haidee had seen no more than 19 or 20 summers. When Monte Cristo entered, she raised herself on her elbow and, welcoming him with a smile, held out her hand to him. "Why do you ask permission to see me?" she said, in the sonorous language of the daughters of Sparta and Athens. "Are you my master no longer? Have I ceased to be your slave?" Monte Cristo smiled as he replied, "Haidee, we are in France, you know, so you are free." "Free to do what?" asked the girl. "Free to leave me." "To leave you? Why should I ever leave you?" "Why should I leave you?" "How do I know? We shall see people." "I do not wish to see anyone." "Should you meet amongst the handsome young men one who pleases you, I should not be so unjust." "I have never yet seen a man more handsome than you, and I have never loved anyone but my father and you." "Poor child," said Monte Cristo, "that is only because you have scarcely spoken to anyone but your father and me. What need have I to converse with others? My father called me his joy, you call me your love, and both of you have called me your child. Do you remember your father, Haidee?" The girl smiled. "He is here and here," said she, pointing to her eyes and her heart. "And where am I?" Monte Cristo asked with a smile. "You? Why, you are everywhere." Monte Cristo took her hand to kiss it, but the simple child withdrew it and offered her cheek. "Listen to me, Haidee," said the Count. "You know that you are free. You are your own mistress. You may still wear your national costume, or discard it, according to your inclination. You may stay here if and when you wish, and go out if and when you wish. There will always be a carriage in readiness for you. Ali and Myrta will accompany you everywhere, and will be at your command. There is but one thing I ask of you. Speak. Disclose not the secret of your birth. Say not a word in regard to your past. On no occasion mention the name of your illustrious father or of your poor mother. I have already told you, my lord, that I will not see anyone. Listen, Haidee. It may be that this seclusion, which is customary in the East, will be impossible in Paris. Continue to learn all you can of our northern countries as you did at Rome, Florence, and Madrid. Such knowledge will always stand you in good stead, whether you continue to live here or return to the East. The slave girl raised her large, tear-bedewed eyes to the Count and said, "You mean to say whether we return to the East, do you not, my lord?" Yes, child. You know I shall never leave you. The tree does not forsake the flower. It is the flower that forsakes the tree.
S0Lu7I0 and just subscribed for
Oh,
5
thank you for
months.
the resub, Solution. 5 whole months. I swear it's just like yesterday. Well, thank you for the resub. I appreciate it. Please enjoy your emotes, which by and by, in 2 months' time, on my affiliate anniversary and my Live 2D debut, I will have 10 new static emotes, and hopefully, if the artist is willing, I will have a few animated ones as well. Thank you, Solution. And thank you for the bits. Yes, child, you know I shall never leave you. The tree does not forsake the flower, it is the flower that forsakes the tree. My lord, I shall never leave you, said Haidee. I could not live without you. Poor child, I shall be old in 10 years, and you will still be young. My father had a long white beard, but that did not prevent my loving him. My father was 60 years of age, but to me he was more handsome than all the young men I saw. Do you think you will be able to settle down here? Shall I see? Shall I see you? Every day. Then what do you fear for me? I fear you may grow weary. That cannot be, my lord, for in the morning I shall be occupied with the thought that you will be coming to see me, and in the evening I shall dwell on the memories of your visit. Besides, when I am alone, I have much to occupy my mind. I summon up mighty pictures of the past, vast horizons with Pindus and Olympia in the distance. Then again, my heart is filled with 3 great sentiments: sadness, love, and gratitude. And with these as companions, it is impossible to grow weary. You are a worthy daughter of imperious Haidee, full of grace and poetry. It is easily seen that you are descended from the family of goddesses born in your own country. Rest assured, my daughter, I will not permit your youth to be lost, for if you love me as a father, I love you as my child. You are mistaken, my lord. I did not love my father as I love you. The love I bear you is quite different. My father is dead, yet I am not dead, whereas if you die, I die. With a smile of exquisite tenderness, the Count held out his hand to her. She pressed her lips to it, as she always did. The Count was now fully prepared for his interview with Morel and his family, and took his leave of Haidee, murmuring these lines of Pindar, which is a Greek lyrical poet from
Hydrate before you dihydrate.
522 to 438 BC. So is that BC as in before Common Era? I think so. You got it. Sikokato. Oh, that's a great name. I'll stay hydrated. The Count was now fully prepared for his interview with Morel and his family, and took his leave of Haidee, murmuring these lines of Pindar. Youth is the flower of which love is the fruit. Happy the gatherer who picks it after watching it slowly mature. In accordance with his orders, the carriage was ready. He stepped in and sped along at his usual high speed. Well, I imagine it's well, between chapters, we usually hydrate, caffeinate, snack, whatever it is we need to relax and enjoy the story. But I think Psycho makes the most sense. It's just a strange spelling of psycho. so I can see where it would make people confused. And I've been reading French and Greek, so psycho is psychokato, like it's got a, but yeah, psychokato makes sense. It's cute, very cute. Also, welcome in, first time chatting. Let's see here. So we're between chapters. I did my spiel. I'm gonna stretch. We'll go ahead and read one more chapter. Then we'll go on an ad break. And I can refill my water, which is a little lower than I would like. But plenty enough to get me through another chapter. So, we are on to chapter 35. The Morel Family. Let's double check. Still no mods. Lots of friends, no mods, as per usual. The Morel Family. The Count arrived at number 14 Rue Meslay in a very few minutes. Oh, that reads so weird. The Count arrived at number 14 Rue Meslay in a very few minutes. Cockley's opened the door, and Baptistine, springing from the box, asked if Monsieur and Madame Herbault and Monsieur Maximilien Morel were at home to the Count of Monte Cristo. Before Christ. Really? Are you... I mean, I think that's a Christian twist for sure, Brahmamsi. I know before Common Era, that's the most common thing that I've seen. But BC... Time to riot, no mods. We'll do quietly since gotta respect the library rules. It's just like waving books around. Be careful of the binding. You realize that year 0 is the birth of Christ. There's no other arbitrary point in time when we start counting up. Interesting. To the Count of Monte Cristo, cried Maximilian, throwing away his cigar and hastening toward his visitor. I should think we are at home to him. 1,000 thanks, Count, for having kept your promise. The young officer shook the Count's hand so cordially that there could be no doubt as to the sincerity of his feelings. Come along, said Maximilian. I will announce you myself. My sister is in the garden plucking the dead roses. My brother is within 5 yards of her reading his two newspapers. Within 5 yards of her reading his 2 papers. For wherever Madame Herbault is, Monsieur Herbault will be found within a radius of 4 yards, and vice versa. At the sound of their steps, a young woman of 20 to 25, dressed in a morning gown, raised her head from the rose bush, which she was carefully trimming. It was no other than Julie, who, as Thompson and French's representative had predicted, had become Madame Emmanuelle Herbault. She uttered a cry of surprise on seeing the stranger. Maximilian began to laugh. Don't upset yourself, Julie, said he. The Count has only been in Paris 2 or 3 days, and knows what a householder of the Marais has to do. And if he does not, you will show him. It is most unkind of my brother to bring you thus, but he never has any regard for his poor sister's vanity. Penelon, An old man who was digging a bed of Bengal roses. Bengal roses. Bengal roses. I wonder what Bengal roses are. Hold on. I'm going to look it up. Bengal roses. Oh, pretty. Oh, okay. Such a soft, peachy color. They're nice. Oh, that's interesting. Bengal Roses is also a story by Bram Stoker, author of Dracula. Huh. Interesting. That is something for later. I'll have to bookmark that. Very pretty roses, though. Let's see. An old man who was digging a bed of Bengal roses stuck his spade into the ground and approached, cap in hand, the while striving. Bad sentence structure. The while striving to hide a quid of tobacco he had just put into his mouth. A few silvery strands mingled with his thick hair, while his bronzed face and bold, keen eye betrayed the old sailor, tanned by tropical suns and many a tempestuous sea. "I believe you hailed me, Mademoiselle Julie," he said. Penelon had retained the habit of calling his master's daughter Mademoiselle Julie, and could never accustom himself to addressing her as Madame Herbault. "Penelon, go and inform Monsieur Emmanuel of this gentleman's arrival." Then, turning to Monte Cristo, she said, "And she said?" "You will permit me to leave you for a few minutes. In the meantime, Maximilian will take you into the salon." Without waiting for a reply, she disappeared behind a clump of trees and regained the house by a side entrance. Possibly. I'm actually a strawberry tiger, not a Bengal tiger, but they're related. Very pretty. The salon was impregnated with the scent of sweet-smelling flowers, massed together in a huge Japanese vase. Julie, appropriately dressed and her hair coquettishly arranged, she had accomplished this feat in 10 minutes, was waiting to receive the Count. The birds could be heard chirping in a neighboring aviary. The laburnum and acacia trees spread their branches so close to the window that the clusters of bloom almost formed a border to the blue velvet curtains. Everything in this little retreat breathed peaceful tranquility, from the song of the birds to the smiles of its owners. From the moment the Count entered, he sensed the atmosphere of happiness. He stood silent and pensive, forgetting that the others were waiting for him to continue the conversation, which had been interrupted during the exchange of salutations. He suddenly became aware of this almost embarrassing silence, and, tearing himself away from his dreams with a great effort, he said, "Pray excuse my emotion, madame. It must astonish you, who are accustomed to the peace and happiness I find here, but it is so unusual for me to find contentment expressed on a human face, that I cannot grow weary of looking at you and your husband." "We are very happy, monsieur," replied Julie, "but we have gone through long and bitter suffering, and there are few people who have bought their happiness at such a high price." The Count's face manifested great curiosity. "It is a family history, Count," said Maximilian. The humble little picture would have no interest for you who are accustomed to the misfortunes of the illustrious and the joys of the rich. We have known bitter suffering. And did God send you consolation in your sorrow as he does to all? Asked Monte Cristo. Yes, Count, we can truly say that he did, replied Julie. He did for us what he only does for his elect. He sent us one of his angels. The Count's cheeks became scarlet, and he coughed in order to have an excuse for hiding his emotion behind his handkerchief. Those who are born in a gilt cradle and have never wanted for anything do not know what happiness life contains, said Emmanuel. Just as they do not appreciate to the full a clear sky who have never entrusted their lives to the mercy of four planks on a raging sea. You can really tell with the way this is worded, like, those born in a gilt cradle, so a gold-covered cradle, have never wanted for anything, do not know what happiness in life contains, right? So those that have always been given everything and have never wanted for anything, don't have any gratification in doing things for themselves. So I can really feel like Alexander Dumas was writing from the proletariat perspective, which, if memory serves, Alexander's like fortunes rose and fell many times. He had a little bit of a gambling problem. So there were times where he was definitely without. So he knew firsthand. It's just kind of interesting. Monte Cristo got up, and without replying, for he feared the tremulousness of his voice would betray his emotion, he began to pace round the room. Ghost River, how can you say that with a straight face? I'm so glad those societal problems are no longer present in the modern age. Ha ha ha. Ah, my heart. So sad. Monte Cristo got up, and without replying, for he feared the tremulousness of his voice would betray his emotion, began to pace round the room. Our magnificence makes you smile, said Maximilian, who was watching Monte Cristo. Not at all, replied Monte Cristo. Deathly pale and pressing one hand to his heart to still its throbbings, while with the other he pointed to a glass case under which lay a silk purse carefully placed on a black velvet cushion. I was only wondering what could be the use of this purse, containing what looks like a piece of paper at one end and a fairly valuable diamond at the other. That is the most precious of our family treasures, Count. The diamond is, indeed, quite a good one. My brother was not alluding to the value of the stone, though it has been estimated at 100,000 francs. What he meant was that the articles contained in that purse are the relics of the angel I mentioned just now. Forgive me, madame. I did not mean to be indiscreet. I could not understand the meaning of the purse, and will ask for no explanation. Indiscreet, did you say? On the contrary, we are grateful to you for giving us an opportunity to open our hearts on the subject. If we wish to make a secret of the noble action which that purse reminds us of, we should not expose it thus to view. We would rather make it known to everyone, so that our benefactor may be compelled to betray his presence by his emotion. Really, said Monte Cristo in a stifled voice, this has touched the hand of a man who saved my father from death, all of us from ruin, and our name from dishonor, said Maximilian, raising the glass case and devoutly kissing the silk purse. It has touched the hand of one whose merit it is that. It has touched the hand of one whose merit it is that Though we were doomed to misery and mourning, others now express their wonder at our happiness. This letter, continued Maximilian, taking the piece of paper from the purse and handing it to the Count, this letter was written by him on a day when my father had taken a desperate resolution, and the diamond was given by our unknown benefactor to my sister as her dowry. Monte Cristo opened the letter and read it with an indescribably happy expression. As our readers will know, it was the note addressed to Julie and signed Sinbad the Sailor. I have not given up hope of one day kissing that hand as I kiss the purse it has touched, said Julie. 4 years ago, Penelon, the gallant tar you saw in the garden with a spade was at Trieste. On the quay he saw an Englishman on the point of boarding a yacht. He recognized him as the man who came to see my father on the 5th of June, 1829, and who wrote this note on the 5th of September. He assures me it was he, but he dared not speak to him. An Englishman, said Monte Cristo, deep in thought and feeling most uneasy every time Julie looked at him. An Englishman, did you say? Yes, replied Morrel, an Englishman who introduced himself to us as the representative of Messieurs Thompson and French of Rome. That is why you saw me start the other day when you mentioned that they were your bankers. As we have said, all this happened in 1829. For pity's sake, Count, tell us, do you know this Englishman? What was his name? Asked Monte Cristo. He left no name but the one he signed at the bottom of the letter. Sinbad the Sailor, said Julie, looking at the Count very closely. Which is evidently only a pseudonym, said Monte Cristo. Then, remarking that Julie was eyeing him more closely than ever and was trying to detect some resemblance in his voice, he continued, was this man not about my height, perhaps a little taller and somewhat thinner, his neck imprisoned in a high cravat, his coat closely buttoned up, and hadn't he the habit of constantly taking out his pencil? You know him, then, exclaimed Julie, her eyes sparkling with joy. No, I am only guessing, said Monte Cristo. I knew a Lord Wilmore who was continually doing things of this kind. Sister, sister, remember what father so often told us, interposed Morrel. He always said it was not an Englishman who had done us this good turn. Monte Cristo started. What did your father tell you? He asked. My father regarded the deed as a miracle. He believed that a benefactor had come from his tomb to help us. It was a touching superstition. It was a touching superstition, Count, and though I could not credit it myself, I would not destroy his faith in it. How often in his dreams did he not mutter the name of a dear friend who was lost to him forever? On his deathbed, when his mind had been given that lucidity that the near approach of death brings with it, this thought, which had till then only been a superstition, became a conviction. The last words he spoke were, Maximilian, it was Edmond Dantes. At these words, the Count, who had been gradually changing color, became alarmingly pale. The blood rushed from his head, and he could not speak for a few seconds. He took out his watch as though he had forgotten the time, picked up his hat, took a hurried and embarrassed leave of Madame Herbault, and pressing the hands of Emmanuel and Maximilian, said, Permit me to renew my visit from time to time, madame. I have spent a happy hour with you, and am very grateful for the kind way in which you have received me. This is the first time for many years that I have given way to my feelings. With that, he strode rapidly out of the room. What a peculiar man this Count of Monte Cristo is, said Emmanuel. He certainly is, replied Maximilian, but I believe he is very noble-hearted, and I'm sure he likes us. As for me, said Julie, his voice went to my heart, and 2 or 3 times it occurred to me that I had heard it before. Dun dun dun. I had heard it before. My goodness. Julie, you can't let them know. Must keep it a secret. Anyway, we are about the hour. Yes, big stretch. Yes, you got it. Good habit. Yep. So we're on the hour.
Hi.
Hello, Hawk. Welcome in. I was just talking about you earlier in the collab on Friday, which I think you had decided on Clue. I don't know, some tabletop sim version. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. It'll happen at 7 p.m. Eastern. More than that, I don't know. But yeah, we'll play Clue or Cluedo, depending on where you are in the world. I am on between chapters. We're almost to the hour. I'll go ahead and go on a quick ad break, and when I come back, we'll read a few more chapters. Let's see, where did we start today? I think it was like 33. So we've read like 3 chapters so far. 33, 34, 35. Yeah, okay, so 3 so far. And then when I come back, we'll read 3 more, hopefully. So hang tight, everybody. We'll be back after a quick ad break where I top off my water and go use the restroom. So friendly reminder, between chapters, hydrate, caffeinate, grab a snack, do whatever you need to relax and enjoy the story. So I will be back shortly. And I have returned with water, refreshed, ready to go, and it looks like a few more friends came to visit. We got Fallen Thespian and Sino the Crocodile, Mayoshi. So, we've got chapter 36. We're going to go ahead and read at least another hour's worth of material, probably a little more, maybe a little less, depends on how the chapters go, because sometimes the linguistic acrobatics are a little rough sometimes. But as they say, fuck it, we ball. Also, the fact that I'm out of caffeine is also a contributing factor to potentially me stopping a little early. So earlier today, I was reading a poem by W.H. Auden, and I think they might be an author I pursue as a poet in the future. Of course, they passed in the 70s, so public domain laws notwithstanding, we'll have to take a look at it and see what's possible. Anyway, I digress. I have rambled. We are going to start with chapter 36. Toxicology. The Count of Monte Cristo had arrived at Madame de Villefort's door, and the mere mention of his name had set the whole house in confusion. Madame de Villefort was in the salon when the Count was announced, and immediately sent for her son to come and renew his thanks to the Count. Edward had heard of nothing but this great personage for the last 2 days, and hastened to obey the summons, not through obedience to his mother, nor yet because he wanted to thank the Count, but from sheer curiosity, and in the hope that he might fire off one of his saucy jokes, which always elicited from his mother the remark, "The bad boy! But I must really overlook it, he is so clever." The bad boy. The bad boy. But I must really overlook it, he is so clever. Oh dear. The bad boy. After the first formalities were exchanged, the Count inquired after Madame de... No, M is Monsieur. After the first formalities were exchanged, the Count inquired after Monsieur de Villefort. My husband is dining with the Chancellor, replied Madame de Villefort. He has only just left, and I am sure he will greatly regret that he has been deprived of the pleasure of seeing you. Where is your sister, Valentine? Said Madame de Villefort, turning to Edward. Send someone for her, so that I may introduce her to the Count. You have also a daughter, madame? Asked the Count. She must be quite a young child. It is Monsieur de Villefort's daughter by his first marriage, and a pretty, well-grown girl she is, too. But melancholy, interrupted Edward, who, wishing to have a plume for his hat, was pulling feathers out of the tail of a parrot that screeched with pain. What an awful little boy! Madame de Villefort merely said, Be quiet, Edward. This young madcap is quite right, nevertheless, and is only repeating what he has unfortunately often heard me say. In spite of all we do to distract her, Mademoiselle Villefort is of a melancholy and taciturn disposition, which often mars her beauty. Why is she not coming, Edward? Go and see what is keeping her so long. They are looking for her where she is not to be found. Where are they looking for her? In Grandpa Noirtier's room. Where is she, then? If you know, tell me. She is under the large chestnut tree, continued the mischievous boy, as, notwithstanding his mother's expostulations, he presented live flies to the parrot, who appeared to relish them. This poor parrot. It's just, reading that tells me quite a bit. I can probably guess that Alexander Dumas never had a parrot. Wouldn't know what they normally eat, but as far as I'm aware, flies are not on the menu. Ah, my gosh. Okay. Also, expostulations? Use that in a sentence. I mean, I know how to, but that is not common vernacular by any stretch of the imagination. Alexander, I think you like the sound of your own voice with some of these words. Madame de Villefort stretched out her hand to ring for the maid to tell her where Valentine was to be found, when the girl herself entered. She certainly looked sad, and on closer inspection the traces of tears were to be seen in her eyes. Very cheeky, Norman. Very cheeky. She was a tall, slim girl of 19, with bright chestnut hair and deep blue eyes. Her whole deportment was languid, but stamped with the elegance which had characterized her mother. Her white and slender hands, her pearly neck and blushing cheek, gave her at first sight the aspect of one of those beautiful Englishwomen who have been rather poetically compared to swans admiring themselves. On seeing beside her mother the stranger of whom she had already heard so much, she curtsied with such grace that the Count was more struck with her than ever. He stood up at once. My stepdaughter, Mademoiselle de Villefort, said Madame de Villefort, and the Count of Monte Cristo, King of China, Emperor of Cochin China, said the young imp, casting a sly look at his sister. Have I not had the honor of seeing both you and Mademoiselle somewhere? Asked the Count, looking first at Madame de Villefort. You got it, Sloth.
Snack time!
Okay. Food will be for after, but I will drink the water now. My stepdaughter, Mademoiselle de Villefort, said Madame de Villefort, and the Count of Monte Cristo, King of China, Emperor of Cochin China, said the young imp, casting a sly look at his sister. Have I not had the honor of seeing both you and Mademoiselle somewhere? Asked the Count, looking first at Madame de Villefort and then at Valentine. It occurred to me just now that I had, and when I saw Mademoiselle enter, her face seemed to throw some light on the confused remembrance, if you will excuse the remark. It is hardly likely, Count. Mademoiselle de Villefort does not like society, and we rarely go out. It is not in society that I have met you, mademoiselle, and the charming little rogue I shall remember in a moment. Stay. The Count put his hand to his forehead as though to concentrate his thoughts. No, it was abroad. It was... I do not quite know where, but it seems to me that this recollection is connected with a beautiful sunny sky and some religious feast. Mademoiselle had some flowers in her hand, and the boy was chasing a peacock while you, madame, were under a vine arbor. Help me out, madame. Does nothing I have told you bring back anything to your mind? No, nothing, replied Madame de Villefort, and it seems to me, Count, that if I had met you anywhere, I should not have forgotten you. Perhaps the Count saw us in Italy, said Valentine, timidly. That indeed is possible, said Monte Cristo. Have you traveled in Italy, mademoiselle? My stepmother and I were there 2 years ago. The doctor feared for my chest and prescribed Naples air for me. We stayed at Bologna, Perugia, and Rome. Can I get a doctor to prescribe me some air in Italy? That would be great. You are right, mademoiselle, exclaimed Monte Cristo, as though this simple indication had sufficed to freshen his memory. It was at Perugia, on the feast of Corpus Christi, in a garden of the Hotel de la Poste. De la Poste. Hotel de la Poste, that we chanced to meet. You, madame, mademoiselle, the boy, and myself. Yes, I remember having had the pleasure of seeing you there. I remember Perugia perfectly, also the Hotel de la Poste, and the feast you mentioned, said Madame de Villefort. But though I have taxed my memory, I am ashamed to say I do not recollect having seen you. Strangely enough, I do not recollect it either, remarked Valentine, raising her beautiful eyes to the Count. I remember, said Edward. I will assist you, madame, resumed the Count. It was a baking hot day. You were waiting for your carriage, which had been delayed in consequence of the feast day celebrations. Mademoiselle went down the garden while your son was chasing the bird. You stayed in the arbor. Do you not remember sitting on a stone bench there, talking for a long time with someone? It is true, said the lady, turning a deep red. I recollect now. I was conversing with a gentleman in a long woolen mantle. I believe he was a doctor. Exactly so. I was that man. I had been staying at that hotel for the past fortnight, and had cured my valet of a fever and my host of the jaundice, so I was looked upon as a great doctor. We talked for a long time on different topics. I do not recollect all the details of our conversation, but I do remember that, sharing the general erroneous opinion about me, you consulted me about your daughter's health. At this moment the clock struck 6. It is 6 o'clock, said Madame de Villefort, obviously agitated. Will you go and see whether your grandfather is ready for his dinner, Valentine? Valentine rose, and, bowing to the Count, left the room without saying a word. Was it on my account that you sent Mademoiselle Valentine away? Asked the Count, when Valentine had gone. Not at all, was the quick reply. It is the hour when we give Monsieur de Notier the miserable repast which supports his wretched existence. You are aware, monsieur, of the deplorable condition of Monsieur de Villefort's father? Yes, madame. He is paralyzed, I think. He is, alas. The poor man has lost all power of movement. His mind alone is active in this poor human machine, and even that is weak and flickering like a lamp waiting to be extinguished. Excuse me for worrying you with our domestic troubles. I interrupted you when you were telling me that you were a skilful doctor. I did not say that, madame, replied the count with a smile. Quite the contrary. I have studied chemistry because, having decided to live chiefly in the East, I wish to follow the example of King Mithridates. Mithridates Rex Ponticus. Okay. Mithridates Rex Ponticus, said the young scamp, cutting up some illustrations in a magnificent album. That was the one who breakfasted every morning off a cup of poison with cream. This boy is cutting up pictures out of... Oh, this child. I would lose my mind. Edward, you naughty child, Madame de Villefort cried out, snatching the mutilated book from her son's hands. You are unbearable and only make yourself a nuisance. Leave us, and go along to your sister in your grandfather's room. Yeet! Exactly, Zeno. The album, said Edward. What do you mean? I want the album. Why? Why have you cut up the drawings? Because it amused me. Leave us. Go. I shan't go until you have given me the album, said the child, settling himself down in a big armchair, true to his habit of never yielding. Here it is. Now leave us in peace, said Madame de Villefort. Hey, Rue, welcome in. She gave Edward the book, and he went out. Allow me to observe, madame, said the count good-naturedly, that you are very severe with your mischievous child. It is sometimes necessary, replied Madame de Villefort, with all the firmness of a mother. He was reciting his Cornelius Nepos when he spoke of King Mithridates, said the count, and you interrupted a quotation which proves that his tutor has not lost time with him. In fact, that your son is advanced for his age. The fact is, Count, replied the mother, pleasantly flattered, that he is very quick and can learn all he wants to. He has only one fault. He is very self-willed. But do you really think Mithridates took such precautions, and that they were efficacious? 1st century BC, Persian monarch famous for having so saturated himself with poisons that he became immune to them. Oh. Mithridates. King Mithridates. A Persian monarch. Immune to poison. I believe it so firmly that I myself have taken these precautions, so as not to be poisoned at Naples, Palermo, and Smyrna. That is to say, in the 3 cases when, without these precautions, I should have lost my life. No, Sino. No. I'm watching you. Did you find this means successful? Perfectly. It is true. I recollect that you told me something about it in Perugia. Really, said the Count with well-feigned surprise, I do not remember. I asked you whether poisons acted with the same force with northerners as with southerners, and you informed me that the cold, lymphatic temperament of the northerners did not offer the same aptitude as the rich and energetic nature of the southerners. It is true, said Monte Cristo. I have seen Russians devour vegetable substances without being in the least indisposed, which would have infallibly killed a Neapolitan or an Arab. Then do you think the result would be more certain with us than in the East? And that in the midst of our fog and rain a man would become more easily accustomed to this progressive absorption of poison than he would do in a warm climate. Certainly, it must be understood, however, that he would only become immune from the particular poison to which he had accustomed himself. I quite understand that. But tell me, how would you accustom yourself? Or rather, how did you accustom yourself? It is quite easy. Supposing you knew beforehand what poison was going to be administered to you, supposing this poison was brucine, for instance, which is an white alkaloid generally derived from the seed of the tree Strychnos nuvomica. Strychnus nuvomica. So strychnus would be like strychnine, which is like apple seeds and other things. Supposing this poison were brucine, for instance. Brucine is extracted from Brucea ferruginea. My goodness, my Latin. Lord, brucine is extracted from the Brucea ferruginea, is it not? Inquired Madame de Villefort. Just so. Well, then, supposing the poison were brucine, resumed the Count, and that you took 1 milligram the first day, 2 milligrams the second day, and so on progressively. Well, at the end of 10 days, you would have taken a centigram, and at the end of 20 days, by increasing this by another milligram, you would have taken another 3 centigrams. That is to say, a dose you would absorb without suffering inconvenience, but which would be extremely dangerous for any other person who had not taken the same precautions as yourself. Well, then, at the end of a month you would have killed the person who drank the water out of the same carafe as yourself. Yet, except for a slight indisposition, you would have no other indication that there was poisonous substance mixed with the water. Do you know of any other antidote? I do not. Madame de Villefort sat pensive. After a short silence, she said, "It is very fortunate that such substances can only be prepared by chemists. Otherwise, one half of the world would be poisoning the other." "By chemists, or those who dabble in chemistry," replied Monte Cristo carelessly. "And then, no matter how scientifically planned a crime may be, it is still a crime," said Madame de Villefort, tearing herself from her thoughts with an effort. "And though it may escape human investigation, it cannot escape the eye of God. Yes, there is conscience to grapple with." "Yes, there is conscience to grapple with," continued Madame de Villefort, in a voice broken with emotion and stifling a sigh. "It is fortunate that we still have some conscience left. Otherwise, we should be very unhappy," said Monte Cristo. "After any vigorous action, it is conscience that saves us, for it furnishes us with 1,001 excuses, of which we alone are judges, and however excellent these reasons may be, to lull us to sleep. Before a tribunal they would most likely avail us little in preserving our lives. Take, for instance, Lady Macbeth. She found an excellent servant in her conscience, for she wanted a throne not for her husband but for her son. Ah, maternal love is a great virtue, and such a powerful motive that it excuses much, but for her conscience, Lady Macbeth would have been very unhappy after Duncan's death. Would have been very unhappy after Duncan's death. There we go. Do you know, Count, that you are a terrible reasoner. Said Madame de Villefort, after a moment's silence. And that you view the world through very dark spectacles. It is by regarding humanity through alembics and retorts that you have formed your opinion. You are right. You are a great chemist. And the elixir you administered to my son, which brought him back to life so rapidly. Oh, madame, said Monte Cristo, 1 drop of the elixir sufficed to call the dying child back to life, but 3 drops would have forced the blood to his lungs in such a manner as to produce palpitations of the heart. 6 would have arrested respiration and caused a much more serious syncope. 10 would have killed him. You may remember, madame, how eagerly I snatched from him the phials which he so imprudently touched. It is such a terrible poison, then. Good gracious, no. First of all, let us admit that the word poison does not exist, since poisons are used in medicines and, according to the manner in which they are administered, become health-giving remedies. What is your elixir, then? A scientific preparation of my friend, the Abbé Adelmonte. The Abbé Adelmonte, who taught me the use of it. It must be an excellent antispasmodic, observed Madame de Villefort. A perfect one, madame. You saw for yourself. I frequently make use of it, with all possible prudence, of course, he added with a laugh. I should think so, replied Madame de Villefort in the same tone. As for me, who am so nervous and prone to fainting, I need a doctor, Adelmonte, to invent for me some means of breathing freely, to relieve me of my fear that I shall suffocate one of these days. In the meantime, as it is difficult to obtain it in France, and as your abbé will not feel inclined to make a journey to Paris on my account, I must content myself with Monsieur Planche's antispasmodics. There we go. But I have the pleasure of offering it to you, said Monte Cristo, rising. Oh, Count! Only remember one thing. In small doses, it is a remedy. In large doses, it is a poison. 1 drop will restore life, as you have witnessed. 5 or 6 will inevitably kill, and all the more terribly that, even when diluted in a glass of water, it in no way changes the flavor. But I will say no more, madame. It is almost if I were advising you. The clock struck 6:30, and a friend of Madame de Villefort, who was dining with her, was announced. If I had the pleasure of seeing you for the 3rd or 4th time, Count, instead of the 2nd, if I had the honor of being your friend instead of simply having the pleasure of being under an obligation to you, I should insist on keeping you for dinner, and I should not let myself be daunted by a first refusal. 1,000 thanks, madame, replied Monte Cristo, but I have an engagement which I cannot avoid. I have promised to take to the opera a Grecian princess of my acquaintance, who has never yet seen grand opera and is relying on me to escort her. I will not detain you then, but do not forget my recipe. Most assuredly not, madame, for that would mean forgetting the hour's conversation I have just had with you, and that would be impossible. Monte Cristo bowed and went out. Madame de Villefort remained standing, wrapped in thought. He is a strange man, said she, and I could almost believe his baptismal name is Adelmonte. As for Monte Cristo, the results had far surpassed all expectations. Here, is fruitful soil," said he to himself as he went away. "I am convinced that the seed I have sown has not fallen on barren ground." Next morning, faithful to his promise, he sent the prescription Madame de Villefort had requested. Ooh la la. So, Dante's is just doling out drugs now, I guess. Weird. Edmund, is there anything you can't do? Hi, Yuki. Don't forget to stretch. I think I'll probably wind up doing a care package. And then I'll just randomly pick from the emotes, like the stretch or the hydrate or what have you. I'll make that one just for you, Yuki, one of these days. Aw, head pats. Head pats from everyone. Huzzah! I love the head pats. Getting that rigged up with the live 2D model has been fun, playing with the redeems. Yeah, it's different, right? Like you can, I would assume with the care package I need to do all of the things, but with it being a random image, you just kind of add a little more variety, which you can set up for it to pull from a specific file. So, big stretch, big stretch. Let's see. Am I still modless? I am modless. Big sad. Well, everyone, we are between chapters, so as Yuki has eloquently demonstrated, remember, hydrate, caffeinate, grab a snack, do whatever it is you need to relax and enjoy the story. We're going to read at least one more, potentially 2 more chapters, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. But let's see. Hydrate. Big stretch. And relax and enjoy the story. You and everyone else, Yuki. It's not just you. Well, I mean, I'm in your presence, Yuki, so I am, of course, doing very well. I hope your eye is doing better. I saw that it had something stuck in your eyeball. Not great, but the doctor was able to fix it, I hope. Oh, excellent. The eye is a mysterious and impressive regenerative powers. So just the sclera. That's good. Well, with adequate, antibiotic ointment and whatnot, I'm sure it'll heal itself beautifully. Okay, we are on to chapter 37. Bearsino. Chapter 37. The Rise and Fall of Stocks. Some days later, Albert de Morcerf called on the Count of Monte Cristo at his house in the Champs-Élysées, which had already assumed the palace-like appearance that the Count, thanks to his immense fortune, always gave even to his temporary residences. Albert was accompanied by Lucien Debray. The Count attributed this visit to a twofold sentiment of curiosity, the larger share of which emanated from the Rue de la Chaussée d'Antin. It was obvious that Madame Danglars, being unable to view with her own eyes the home of the man who gave away horses worth 30,000 francs, and who went to the opera accompanied by a slave wearing a wearing a million's worth of diamonds, had sent her deputy to gather what information he could. Notwithstanding, the Count did not appear to suspect the slightest connection between Lucien's visit and the Baroness's curiosity. "You are in constant communication with Baron Danglars?" he inquired of Albert de Morcerf. "Oh, yes, you know what I told you. It still holds good, then." "Also, welcome in, Oscurius." "It is quite a settled affair," interposed Lucien, and doubtless thinking that this remark was all he was called upon to make, he put his tortoiseshell lorgnette? He put his tortoiseshell lorgnette to his eye, and with the gold top of his stick in his mouth, began to pace round the room, examining the different pictures and weapons. "Is Mademoiselle Eugénie pretty?" asked Monte Cristo. "I seem to remember that is her name." "Very pretty, or rather beautiful," replied Albert. "But it is a beauty I do not appreciate. I am an undeserving fellow. Mademoiselle Danglars is too rich for me. Her riches frighten me." "That's a fine reason to give," said Monte Cristo. "Are you not rich yourself?" "My father has an income of some 50,000 francs, and will probably give me 10 or 12,000 when I marry, but there is something besides that." "I must own I can hardly understand your objections to such a beautiful and rich young woman," replied the Count. "Even if there are any objections, they are not all on my side." "Who raises objections, then? I think you told me your father was in favor of the marriage." "My mother objects to it, and she has a very prudent and penetrating eye. She does not smile on this union. For some reason she has a prejudice against the Danglars family." "Ah, that is quite comprehensible," said the Count in a somewhat strained tone of voice. "The Countess of Morcerf, who is distinction, aristocracy, and refinement personified, is somewhat disinclined to touch the thick, clumsy hand of a plebeian. That is only natural." "Thank you for the head pats." "I really do not know whether that is the reason," said Albert. "What I do know is, that if this marriage is concluded, it will make her unhappy. It would be too great a disappointment to my father if I did not marry Mademoiselle Danglars, and yet I would rather quarrel with the Count than cause my mother pain." Monte Cristo turned away, apparently agitated. "What are you doing there?" said he to Debray, who was seated in a deep armchair at the other end of the room, with a pencil in one hand and a notebook in the other. "Are you making a sketch of that Poussin?" "I," said he calmly, "a sketch? No, I am doing something very different. I am doing some arithmetic." "Arithmetic?" "Yes, and it concerns you indirectly, Morcerf." Let's see. Nicolas Poussin, I'm probably butchering that. Nicolas Poussin, 1594 to 1665, French neoclassical painter. Okay, cool. I'm not familiar with their work. "Yes, and it concerns you indirectly, Morcerf. Let's see. I was reckoning what the firm of Danglars have gained by the last rise in Haiti stock. They have risen from 206 to 409 in 3 days, and the wise banker bought a large amount at 206. He must have gained 300,000 francs." "That is not his best deal," said Morcerf. "Didn't he make 1,000,000 this year with his Spanish bonds?" "Yes, but the Haitis are quite a different matter. Yesterday Monsieur Danglars sold them at 406 and pocketed 300,000 francs. Had he waited until today, when the bonds fell to 205, he would have lost 25,000 francs instead of making 300,000. But why have the bonds fallen from 409 to 205? Asked Monte Cristo. Pardon my question, but I am very ignorant of all these tricks on the exchange. Because one piece of news follows the other, and there is great dissimilarity between them, replied Albert with a laugh. What? Does Monsieur Danglars speculate at the risk of losing or gaining 300,000 francs a day? He must be enormously rich. It is not he who speculates, exclaimed Lucien energetically. It is Madame Danglars. She is very daring. But you should stop her, said Morcerf with a smile. You have common sense enough to know how little one can rely on communiques, for you are at their very source. How should I be able to stop her when her husband has not yet succeeded in doing so? You know the Baroness. No one has any influence over her. She does just what she pleases. If I were in your place, I should cure her, said Albert. You would be doing a kind of action to her future son-in-law. How would you set about it? It would be perfectly easy. I should teach her a lesson. Your position as minister's secretary gives you great power over telegraphic dispatches. You never open your mouth to speak, but stockbrokers take down every word you say. Make her lose 100,000 francs, and she will soon be more careful. I don't understand, stammered Lucien. Nevertheless, it is quite comprehensible, replied the young man simply. One fine morning, tell her something stupendous, a telegraphic communication that you alone could know. For example, that Henry IV was seen yesterday at Gabriel's. That would cause the bonds to rise. She would speculate, and would certainly lose when Beauchamp wrote in his journal the following day, the news circulated by some well-informed person that King Henry IV was seen at Gabriel's the day before yesterday is absolutely without foundation. King Henry IV has not left the Pont Neuf, which is the reference to the statue of Henry IV, King of France, on the tip of Halle de la Cité, adjacent to the bridge. All right. King Henry IV has not left Pont Neuf. Lucien gave a forced laugh. Monte Cristo, to all appearances quite indifferent to the conversation, had not lost one word of it, and his quick perception had detected a hidden secret in the private secretary's embarrassment. In fact, Lucien was so embarrassed, though Albert did not perceive it, that he cut short his visit. He evidently felt ill at ease. When the Count accompanied him to the door, he said something to him in a low voice, to which he replied, "I accept with pleasure, Count." The Count returned to the young Morcerf, and said, "Do you not think that, on reflection, you were wrong to speak as you did of your mother-in-law before Monsieur Debray?" "Not so fast, Count," said Morcerf. "I pray do not give her that title so prematurely. Without any exaggeration, is your mother really so greatly opposed to this marriage? To such an extent that the Baroness rarely comes to the house, and so far as I know, my mother has not visited Madame Danglars twice in her whole life. Then I am emboldened to speak openly to you," said the Count. "Monsieur Danglars is my banker. Monsieur de Villefort has overwhelmed me with politeness in return for a service which a casual piece of good fortune enabled me to render him. I predict from this an avalanche of dinners and parties. Now, in order to forestall them, and if it be agreeable to you, I propose inviting Monsieur and Madame Danglars and Monsieur and Madame de Villefort to my country house in Auteuil. If I were to invite you and the Count and Countess of Morcerf to this dinner, it would give it the air of matrimonial rendezvous, or at least Madame de Morcerf would look upon it in that light, especially if Baron Danglars did me the honour of bringing his daughter. In that case, I should incur your mother's displeasure, and that I do not wish. On the contrary, pray tell her this Pray tell her this whenever the occasion arises. I desire to occupy a prominent place in her esteem. I thank you sincerely for having been so candid with me, Count, and I gratefully accept the exclusion you propose. You say you desire my mother's good opinion of you. I assure you it is already yours to a very... Goodness, that caught me unaware. I assure you it is already yours to a very large extent. Thank you, Sino. Us curious. Yes. Gesundheit. Or good health. It's just the stream of bless you. It's just like, oh, vexing sneezed. How cute. Ah, dear. Do you think so? Said Monte Cristo, interestedly. I am sure of it. We talked of you for an hour after you left us the other day. But no return to what we were saying. If my mother knew of this consideration on your part, and I will venture to tell her, I am sure she would be most grateful to you. It is true that my father will be equally furious. The Count laughed. But I think your father will not be the only angry one, he said to Morcerf. Monsieur and Madame Danglars will think me a very ill-mannered person. They know that I am on an intimate footing with you, that you are in fact one of my oldest Paris acquaintances, yet they will not find you at my house. They will certainly ask me why I did not invite you. Be sure to provide yourself with some prior engagement with a semblance of probability, and communicate the fact to me in writing. You know that with bankers nothing but a written document is valid. I will do better than that, said Albert. My mother is anxious to go to the seaside. For which day is your dinner fixed? Saturday. This is Tuesday. Well, we will leave tomorrow evening, and the day after we shall be at Tréport. Do you know, Count, you have a charming way of setting people at their ease. Indeed, you give me credit for more than I deserve. I only wish to do what would be agreeable to you. That is settled, then. Now will you show yourself a true friend and come and dine with me? We shall be a small party, only yourself, my mother, and I. You have scarcely seen my mother. You will have an opportunity of making her closer acquaintance. She is a remarkable woman, and I only regret there does not exist another about 20 years younger like her. In that case, I assure you, there would very soon be a countess and a viscountess of Morcerf. 1,000 thanks, said the Count. Your invitation is most kind, and I regret exceedingly that it is not in my power to accept it. I am not so free as you suppose. On the contrary, I have a most important engagement. Take care. You showed me just now how one could credibly refuse an unwelcome invitation. I require proofs. I am not a banker like Monsieur Danglars, but I assure you, I am as incredulous as he. I will give you a proof, said the Count as he rang the bell. Humph, said Morcerf. This is the second time you have refused to dine with my mother. It is evidently done deliberately. Monte Cristo started. You do not mean that, said he. Besides, here comes my proof. Baptistine entered and remained standing at the door. Baptistine, said the Count, what did I tell you this morning when I called you into my study? To close the door against visitors as soon as the clock struck 5, replied the valet. What then? You further told me to admit no one but Major Bartolomeo. Oh my goodness. This is a very Italian name. Major Bartolomeo Cavalcanti. Oh my goodness. That's got a mouthfeel. To admit no one but Major Bartolomeo Cavalcanti and his son. You hear? Major Cavalcanti, a man who ranks amongst the most ancient nobility of Italy, whose name Dante has celebrated in the 10th canto of the Inferno. You remember it, don't you? Then there is his son, a charming young man of about your age, Viscount, and bear the same title as yourself, who is making his debut into Paris society, aided by his father's millions. The major will bring his son, the Contino, or Little Count, as we say in Italy, with him this evening. He wishes to confide him to my care, if he prove himself worthy of it. I will do what I can for him. You will assist me, will you not? Most certainly. The Major Cavalcanti is an old friend of yours? By no means. I met him several times at Florence, Bologna, and Lucca, and he has now communicated to me that he has arrived here. I shall give him a good dinner. He will confide his son to my care. I shall promise to watch over him. I shall let him follow in whatever path his folly may lead him, and then I shall have done my part. Splendid. I see you are a valuable mentor, said Albert. Goodbye. We shall be back on Sunday. By the way, I have received news of France. Have you? Is he still enjoying himself in Italy? I believe so, and he greatly regrets your absence. He says you were the sun of Rome, and that without you all appears dark and cloudy. I am not sure that he does not go so far as to say that it rains. He is a charming young man, said Monte Cristo, and I have always felt a lively interest in him. He is the son of General Epinay, de Epinay, I think. Yes, he is. The same who was so shamefully assassinated in 1815 by the Bonapartists. That's it. Really, I like him extremely. Is there not a matrimonial engagement contemplated for him, too? Yes. He is to marry Mademoiselle de Villefort. Indeed? And you know I am to marry Mademoiselle Danglars, said Albert, laughing. You smile. Why? I smile because there seems to be as much sympathy for that marriage as there is for my own. But really, my dear Count, we are talking as much of women as they do of us. It is unpardonable. Albert rose. Give my compliments to your illustrious visitor, Cavalcanti, he continued, and if by any chance he should be desirous of finding a wife for his son, who is very rich, of very noble birth on her mother's side, and a baroness in right of her father, I will help you to find one. And with a laugh, Albert departed. Well, there we go. Okay. I'm debating. I think I have one more in me. One more chapter, which would be, I think, 6 chapters today. Not bad. Yada, 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 rigmarole, spiel, between chapters, yada, yada, hydrate, yada, yada, snack, yada, yada, all that jazz. All right, so we are between chapters. You know the drill. So I'm gonna stretch. If you hear bones popping, no, you don't. All right, we'll read one more chapter today, and then after that, I can get ready to pop out and grab something to eat because I am famished. And unfortunately, a molasses cookie does not do the trick, so to speak. So I will have to get something a little more substantive. Yeah, I'll get some proper foods. But first, one more chapter, and then we will put it up for the day. And then we'll be back on Wednesday for more reading. So, one more chapter, and then into the brink, which is good because we won't have to do another ad break, which is as is my preference. Speaking of ad breaks, who are we raiding into? My dear friend Neff is reading a mystery today. Obelisk is playing Darkest Dungeon. Valkyrie is playing Two Worlds 2. Hunt Showdown, multiply. Spud is playing Persona 2. All around me are familiar faces. Da, 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 da. A lot of people are playing that Uma Musume, that horse game. It's so funny. Oh, Errol is going to be chatting. Archivist is chatting. Oh, Bone is streaming. It's been a minute since he streamed, so that might be a good one to run into. If I read one more chapter. Ooh, Luca, what are you doing? Swedish folklore and horror streamer. Ah, that Unforgiving, a northern hymn. I'm not familiar with that one. I'm not sure what game that is, but it sounds very interesting. For those of you not familiar with who Luca Nasu is, an amazing Oni streamer. She is part of Gen 2 of Underrealm, and I love her to bits. And she is going to be streaming Unforgiving, a Northern Hymn, which I know nothing about, but sounds promising. So we might raid into Lucar or into Bone. We'll just see who's doing what in the next 30 minutes. So hang on to that. There we go. It's in human nature to bet on the horse tracks. And not just in horse tracks. We'll bet on anything that's racing. Snails, mice, turtles, rabbits, anything. If we can have something to compare it to something else, rocks rolling down a hill. The egg drop. There is a bet that happens every year. So up north, we have a really big river. And on this river, every winter, it freezes. And then in the spring, there is a betting pool of which day, which hour, the ice will finally break and the river will break free and flow down river. And I mean, like, not just like a little piece falling off, but like really like the fullness of the ice will fully crash into the water. But yeah, people will bet on anything. If somebody has a chance of winning and somebody has a chance of losing, a lot of people will bet. Okay. Let's read one more chapter, which is chapter 38. Okay. Chapter 38. Pyramus and Thisbe. Our readers must permit us to conduct them to enclosures surrounding Monsieur de Villefort's house. And behind the gate, half hidden by wide-spreading chestnut trees, we shall find some persons of our acquaintance. Maximilian was the first to arrive. With his eyes close to the fence, he was watching for a shadow among the trees at the bottom of the garden and listening for a footfall on the gravel paths. At length the desired sound was heard, but instead of one shadow there were two. Valentine had been delayed by a visit from Madame Danglars and Eugenie, which had lasted longer than she had anticipated. But that she might not fail to keep her appointment with Maximilian, she had proposed to Mademoiselle Danglars that they should take a walk in the garden, which would enable her to show Maximilian that the delay was not caused by any fault of hers. With the intuitive perception of a lover, the young man understood the circumstances and was greatly relieved. Besides, without coming within speaking distance, Valentine led her companion where Maximilian could see her go by, and each time she passed near him, a look, unperceived by her companion, said to him, "Have patience, my dear. Have patience, my friend. You see, it is none of my doing." And Maximilian was patient, and spent his time appreciating the contrast between the two young girls, the one fair-haired, with languid eyes and a tall figure, slightly bent like a beautiful weeping willow, the other dark-haired, with fiery eyes and a figure as upright as a poplar. Needless to say, the comparison between these two opposed natures was all in Valentine's favor, at least in the opinion of the young man. At the end of half an hour, the girls disappeared, and an instant later Valentine returned alone. She ran up to the gate. "Good evening, Valentine," said a voice. "Good evening, Maximilian. I have kept you waiting, but you saw the reason." "Yes, I recognized Mademoiselle Danglars. I did not know you were so intimate with her." "Who told you we were intimate?" "No one, but the manner in which you walked and talked rather suggested it. You looked like two schoolgirls exchanging confidences." "We were, in fact, exchanging confidences," returned Valentine. She was telling me how repugnant to her was the idea of marriage with Monsieur de Morcerf, and I confessed to her how unhappy I was at the thought of marrying Monsieur d'Épinay. In speaking of the man I cannot love, I thought of the man I love. She told me that she detests the idea of marriage, that her greatest joy would be to lead a free and independent life, and that she almost wished her father would lose his fortune so that she could become an artist like her friend, Mademoiselle Louis de Amélie. But let us talk of ourselves and not of her, for we have not more than 10 minutes together. Why, what has happened, Valentine, that you must leave me so soon?" "I do not know. Madame de Villefort told me to go to her room, as she had something to communicate to me which influences a part of my fortune." "Ah, well, let them take the whole of my fortune. I am too rich. When they have taken it, perhaps they will leave me in peace. You would love me just as much if I were poor, would you not, Maximilian?" "I shall always love you. What should I care about wealth or poverty so long as my Valentine was near me, and I was sure no one could take her from me? But do you not fear the communication may be in connection with your approaching marriage?" "I do not think so." "In any case, listen to me, Valentine, and do not be afraid. For as long as I live, I will never belong to another." It's interesting that Maximilian Morel, right, the Morels would be so invested in Valentine, which is the de Villefort. So Valentine being the daughter of de Villefort's first wife that passed away. It's interesting to me that those two would be in connection with one another. Let's see here. Grab that. Sorry. Quick text message. There we go. I shall continue. Mhm. All right. In any case, listen to me, Valentine, and do not be afraid. For as long as I live, I will never belong to another. Do you think you make me happy by telling me that, Maximilian? Forgive me, dear, for being such a churl. What I wanted to tell you is that the other day I met Monsieur de Morcerf, who, as you know, is Monsieur Franz's friend. He had received a letter from him intimating his early return. Valentine turned pale and leaned against the gate for support. Can it be that, she cried, but no, such a communication would not come from Madame de Villefort. Why not? Because I scarcely know why. But though she does not oppose my proposed marriage openly, Madame de Villefort seems to be against it. Is that so? Then I think I almost love Madame de Villefort. Do not be in such a hurry, Maximilian, said Valentine with a sad smile. If she is adverse to this marriage, let the engagement be broken off, and then perhaps she would lend her ear to some other proposal. Do not lay any hopes on that, Maximilian. It is not the husband my stepmother objects to, it is the marriage itself. You don't mean to say so? But if she has such a strong aversion to marriage, why did she herself marry? You do not understand. A year ago, when I spoke of entering a convent, though she felt it her duty to make certain comments, she accepted my proposal with joy. Even my father consented. At her instigation, I am sure. It was my poor grandfather kept me back. Maximilian, you can have no idea of the expression in the eyes of the old man who loves no one but me. And, may God forgive me if I am wrong, who is loved by no one but me. If you knew how he looked at me when he heard of my resolution, what reproach there was in those dear eyes, and despair in the uncomplaining tears that chased each other down his lifeless cheeks. Oh, Maximilian, I felt such remorse that I threw myself at his feet, exclaiming, "Forgive me, oh, forgive me, grandfather. Let them do with me what they will. I will never leave you." He just raised his eyes to heaven. I can suffer much. That look recompensed me in advance for all I shall suffer. Dearest Valentine, you are an angel, and I am sure I do not know in what way I have merited your love. But tell me, how could it be to Madame de Villefort's interest that you should not marry? Did I not tell you just now that I was rich? Too rich. I have an income of nearly 50,000 francs from my father, my grandfather and grandmother, the Marquis and Marquis, okay. Grandfather and grandmother, the Marquis and Marquis of Saint-Méran, will leave me a similar amount. Monsieur Noirtier obviously intends to make me his sole heir, by comparison with me. Therefore my brother Edward, who will inherit no fortune from his mother, is poor. Madame de Villefort's love for this child amounts to adoration, and if I had taken the veil, all my fortune would have descended to my father, and would ultimately have reverted to her son. How strange that such a young and beautiful woman should be so avaricious, avaricious. There we go. Such a young and beautiful woman should be so avaricious. It is not for herself she wants the money. It is for her son, and what you consider a vice is almost a virtue from the point of view of maternal love. But why not give up part of your fortune to her son? How could I propose such a thing, especially to a woman who continually speaks of her disinterestedness? Valentine, my love, is sacred to me, and this being so, I have covered it with the veil of respect and locked the door to my heart. No one knows of its existence there, for I have confided in no one. Will you permit me to speak of this love to a friend?" Valentine started. "To a friend?" said she. "Oh, to hear you speak thus makes me shudder. Who is this friend?" "Valentine, have you never felt for anyone an irresistible sympathy so that though you meet this person for the first time, you feel you have known him long since? I have. Well, then, this is the feeling I had the first time I saw this extraordinary man who has, I hear, the power to prophesy." "Then," said the girl sadly, "let me know him that I may learn from him whether I shall be loved sufficiently to compensate me for all I have suffered." "Poor girl, you know him already. It is he who saved the life of your stepmother and her son, the Count of Monte Cristo." "It is he." "Oh, he can never be my friend," exclaimed Valentine. "He is too much the friend of Madame de Villefort ever to be mine." "The Count, your stepmother's friend, Valentine? That cannot be. I am sure you must be mistaken." "If you but knew! It is no longer Edward who rules in the house, it is the Count, courted by my stepmother, who sees in him the essence of human knowledge, admired, mark well, Maximilian, admired by my father, who says he has never heard the most elevated ideas expressed so eloquently, idolized by Edward, who, despite his fear of the Count's large black eyes, runs to him as soon as he arrives and forces his hand open, where he always finds some fascinating toy. Monte Cristo is not in my father's or my stepmother's house. He is in his own house." "Valentine, you are mistaken, I assure you. If it were otherwise, he would have honored me at least with one of those smiles, of which you think so much. On the contrary, he sees me unhappy. But he realizes that I can be of no use to him, so he does not pay any attention to me. Quite frankly, I am not a woman to be treated with contempt in this manner without any reason for it. You yourself have told me as much. Forgive me, Maximilian," she continued, on seeing the impression her words were producing on Maximilian. "I am a wicked girl, and am saying things about this man that I did not know existed in my heart. Alas, I see that I have pained you. If only I could take your hand to ask your forgiveness. I desire nothing better than to be convinced. Tell me, what has this Count done for you?" "I must confess that question rather embarrasses me. He has done nothing that I can definitively mention. My friendship for him is as unaccountable as his is for me. A secret voice warns me that there is something more than chance in this unlooked-for reciprocity of friendship. You will laugh at me, I know, but ever since I have known him, the absurd idea possesses me that everything good that befalls me comes from him. Yet I have lived for 30 years without feeling the need of this friendship. I will give you an example of his consideration for me. He has invited me to dinner on Saturday, which is quite natural in view of our present relations. But what have I learned since? Your mother and father are also invited. I shall meet them, and who knows what will be the issue of such a meeting. In appearance, this is a perfectly simple circumstance, I know. Nevertheless, I see in it something that astonishes me and fills me with a strange hope. I cannot help thinking that this extraordinary man, who divines all things, has arranged this meeting with some aim in view. I assure you, there are times when I try to read in his eyes whether he has not even guessed my love for you." "My dear," said Valentine, "I should take you for a visionary, and should really fear for your reason, if I were to listen to many more such arguments from you. No, no, believe me, apart from you, there is no one in this world to whom I can turn for help and support but my grandfather, who is not much more than alive, and my poor mother, of whom there is nothing left but a shadow. I feel that you are right, Valentine, from a logical point of view, but your sweet voice, which at other times possesses so much power over me, cannot convince me today. Neither can you convince me. Neither can you? Yeah, I'm going to say neither. Neither can you convince me, said Valentine, and I will confess that if you have no other proofs to give me, but I have, interrupted Maximilian, though I am compelled to own that it sounds even more absurd than the first one. Look through the palings, and you will see tied to that tree yonder the horse that brought me here. What a beautiful animal! Exclaimed Valentine. Why did you not bring him up to the gate? I should have spoken to him, and he would have understood me. As you see, it is really a very valuable animal, Maximilian continued. You also know that my income is limited, and I am what one would call a careful man. I went to a horse dealer's and saw this magnificent animal that I have called Medea. On asking the price, I was told 4,500 francs. As you can imagine, I admired it no longer. But, I must confess, I left with a heavy heart. I had a few friends at my house that evening, and they proposed a game of bouillette. A game of bouillette. As we were seating ourselves at the table, the Count of Monte Cristo arrived. He took his seat. We played, and I won. I hardly dare tell you how much. It was 5,000 francs. We parted at midnight. I could contain myself no longer. I took a cab and drove to the horse dealer's, and, filled with feverish excitement, rang the bell. The man who opened the door to me must have taken me for a madman. I rushed through to the stable. Oh, joy! There was Medea, calmly eating his hay, and I took a saddle and bridle and put them on him. Then, placing the 4,500 francs in the astonished dealer's hand, I leapt on to Medea's back and spent the night riding in the Champs-Élysées. I saw a light in the Count's window, and I seemed to see his shadow behind the curtain. Now I am perfectly certain the Count knew how badly I wanted that horse, and that he intentionally lost at cards so that I might win. Dearest Maximilian, you are becoming so fanciful that I verily believe you will not love me any more. A man who lives in such a world of poetry will grow weary of monotonous passions such as ours. But listen, they are calling me. Do you hear? Oh, Valentine, give me your little finger through the gate that I may kiss it. Maximilian, we said we would be to each other as two voices, two shadows. As you wish, Valentine. Will it make you happy if I do what you ask? Oh, yes. Valentine jumped onto a bench and passed her whole hand, not her little finger, through the grating. Maximilian uttered a cry of joy, and springing forward, seized the beloved hand and imprinted on it a long and impassioned kiss. But the little hand slipped out of his almost immediately, and the young man heard his beloved running toward the house, frightened perhaps of her own sensations.